people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Eddie Hearn's reaction to losing the purse bid for the Callum Smith versus Artur Beterbiev fight. He says
he's gutted he lost it, but he feels that Callum Smith has a great chance to win. I don't share in that opinion.
Hearn told BoxingScene.com, I'm gutted. $5,000. I bid $2.1 million and they bid $2,115,000. Everyone has said they must have known what our bid was to only beat it by that much. But in reality, when there have been offers made throughout a period of negotiation, you know roughly what the other side's bid will be. Having said that, it's very unusual to lose it by so little. I've never had a purse bid that close. I've lost by 30 or 40 grand before, but never as little as 15,000 on a bid as high as 2.1 million. And I was so close to making it 2.2. I was literally a minute from bidding that much. But we were bidding to probably lose money on that fight, which means it's not quite as painful as others. But I was gutted because I really wanted to have Callum's fight in Liverpool.
One of the issues with this purse bid is that Callum Smith is the challenger and Artur Beterbiev is the champion. So the more Matchroom would have bid for the show, the more they would have had to pay Artur, not their own fighter.
It would have been more money in Artur's pocket because he's the champion, entitled to the lion's share of the pot. I texted Callum straight after telling him there was only 15,000 in it. He was gutted as well. As per the WBC rules, champion Beterbiev is entitled to 70% of 90% of the winning bid, while Smith will claim 30%. The remaining 10%, a figure of
211,000, will be on the line on the night, a winner's bonus. 90% of 2.1 million is 1.9 million.
And 30% of 1.9 million is $570,000. That's what Callum Smith is entitled to in this fight. $500,000, just a little over $500,000. You wonder that it wouldn't be a more lucrative option for Callum to take on Dimitri Bivol
in the summer in Liverpool for at least $1 million.
Would be an in-house fight, relatively easy for Matchroom to make, and in previous years, Dimitri Bivol himself has expressed an interest in taking on Callum Smith. Perhaps that interest would still be there because Dimitri needs a dance partner for the summer, though Eddie Hearn, he doesn't seem too broken up about losing this purse bid. He added, the problem when you're on the small end of a purse split is as the challenger, you can't stack it. If you promote the champion, here, Beterbiev, you can say, right, you're going to get 1 million and we will make sure we win the bid. But you can't really do the same with Callum because he's getting 30% of the purse split. They now have to give us the date within 7 days and stage the fight
within 90 days. Otherwise, it defaults to us. It looks like that fight will be in Montreal, but we will wait and see. Beterbiev is currently 19-0, with all 19 coming inside the distance, and holds the WBC, IBF, and WBO belts at light heavyweight. His last outing was an 8th-round knockout of Smith's compatriot Anthony Yarde in London, which further cemented the Russian's status as one of the most destructive punchers in the sport. But Hearn is adamant that the timing is right for 33-year-old Smith, a former super middleweight champion, to dethrone the light heavyweight king. And I disagree. The respect that Callum Smith gave John Ryder, the respect that he gave Canelo Alvarez, these guys don't punch anywhere near as hard as Artur.
If those guys with their punching power were able to elicit that level of respect from Callum, what the hell's Artur gonna do?
He's a bigger puncher than both, a bigger man than both.
I think Callum has a great chance, Hearn said. Nobody hits harder with the left hook in that division than Smith, particularly in the catch and counter situation, and there will be opportunities for Callum to land that shot. If he lands it on Beterbiev, he will knock him clean out. Sooner or later, these tough fights will catch up with Beterbiev. The Yarde fight was a tough fight, and he has been in others. The time is right for Smith.
You know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like Eddie's giving him little more than just a puncher's chance, and that's not the first time I've heard that.
In reference to Callum Smith's chances to land that catch and counter left hook. There will be opportunities to land it, but will Callum?
Will he capitalize? Will he be confident enough to throw it? You have to remember, he throws that catch and counter left hook out of a high guard.
You don't keep them elbows tucked. That gives Artur plenty of opportunity to nail you to the body.
Well, you try to land that catch and counter left hook. You're anticipating shots on the arms and gloves, shots upstairs. You leave that area open.
That area of your midsection. You think Artur's not going to see it? You think he's not going to hit you there? He is.
And that's provided that Callum is confident enough to go for that shot. You have to remember, before push comes to shove, they're going to test each other out. Callum is going to feel the full brunt, the weight of Artur's punches on his arms and gloves.
That in and of itself may elicit a lot of respect from the challenger to the champion. Everybody's waiting for Father Time to catch up to Artur Beterbiev, but it could be a painful wait for Callum Smith.
Power's the last thing to go.
And what's Artur known for? He's known for power, short-range power, in the phone booth, mid-range to inside. He ain't one of these guys that's got to load up his punches to put something on them.
On top of his punches being very short, punches that don't travel very far, he's got naturally heavy hands.
Artur Beterbiev's form. He doesn't need to load up on his shots. He shoots from the hip.
These are very short punches that don't have to travel very far to reach the target. And when they do optimal damage.
The idea that Callum is going to catch Artur Beterbiev with that catch and counter left hook relies on the principle that he'll feel brave enough mid-range to inside to let his hands go.
I'm not sure about that.
If by some chance he does pull the upset, he does land that shot, and he does knock out Artur Beterbiev, that would give Matchroom full hegemonical control over the men's light heavyweight division, as all the belts, all the marbles would be on their side of the street in that scenario.
Making a unification match that much easier to make, since it could all happen in-house between Callum Smith and Dimitri Bivol, at least theoretically. The problem is, the WBC's giving Dimitri a very hard time.
They very recently stated that so long as the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is going on, they're not going to allow him to fight for any version of the WBC title.
They're taking a hard-line stance against that guy, that particular guy.
Making any undisputed fight involving Dimitri a non-starter, at least for the WBC.
Just something to think about in the event that Callum Smith pulls this off, though I don't think he's going to.
Relying on a single punch, a catch and counter left hook is tantamount to giving him a puncher's chance. Just a puncher's chance.
And I don't like his chances.
Downstairs at super middleweight, on the heels of his latest knockout win, David Morrell's trainer, Ronnie Shields, believes that David Benavidez' clash may happen next. And by all rights, it should, because David Benavidez and David Morrell are on the same side of the street. Thus, there are no political boundary lines to have to work through.
Bright stars in the super middleweight division.
When last seen, the Cuban native made it look incredibly easy against Yamaguchi Falcao, scoring a first-round stoppage win just a few short weeks ago. Immediately following his victory, Morrell audaciously turned his attention towards another 168-pounder who's been making gigantic headlines. I'm 100% focused on David Benavidez, said Morrell just before he took care of business against Falcao. I want to fight him. I think he'll want to fight me. So, let's get it. No more excuses, no more nothing. Let's fight.
Very recently, David Benavidez' father detailed a 3-fight deal they just inked with the PBC. The first fight of that deal was the plant fight.
They've been there and done that. Now they move towards either a Jermall Charlo fight, a Demetrius Andrade fight, or a David Morrell fight. Now, with Jermall Charlo still campaigning as a middleweight, having been out 2 years, it's not likely he fights David next.
And that leaves only Demetrius Andrade or David Morrell to contend with.
David Benavidez, fresh off a close but clear unanimous decision win over Caleb Plant, has also expressed a desire to face Morrell in the not-so-distant future. With the pair eyeing a matchup between each other, Ronnie Shields, Morrell's trainer, is not only convinced that they'll face off next, but he's also welcoming it. Absolutely, said Shields to 210 Boxing TV when asked if he believes that Benavidez versus Morrell will happen.
I think it may happen next.
As it should. David Benavidez versus David Morrell. Spicy fight that it might be. It's a fight that involves two guys that are on the same side of the street. Neither guy is so big a name that they can afford to have long spells of inactivity throughout the year. There's no reason that David and David shouldn't fight at least 2 times this year.
There's no reason for it. If you want to build your brand, you have to fight.
In addition to Morrell making his future plans clear, the former Olympian also stated that he's more than willing to remain sequestered on the sidelines until their clash ultimately materializes. realizes, unable to take a peek into his crystal ball, Shields isn't exactly sure when the two will swap fists in the center of the ring. However, taking into account his recent jaw-dropping performance, Shields is now under the assumption that
Morrell's phone will be ringing in short order. I don't know when, but I'm sure they'll be in talks real soon.
They have to be. Like I said, neither guy is so big a name that they can only afford to fight once or twice a year. I mean, think about it. David Benavidez is so obviously a guy that both the PBC and Showtime are invested in, and he only fought once last year.
Can't afford to do that this year.
And the even lesser-known David Morrell, he can't afford to do that either. He's an exciting fighter to watch, but nobody's watching him if he ain't fighting, so they both need to get busy.
Both of them.
David Morrell himself says he believes the Benavidez fight has to happen, and Canelo must face the winner.
No, I don't disagree with that sentiment. So long as Canelo Alvarez is this division's undisputed champion, he must answer to the winner of this fight.
David's is mandatory by way of the WBC, David Benavidez, and David Morrell is mandatory by way of the WBA.
This weekend, he's set to take care of his mandatory by way of the WBO. Canelo will defend the undisputed super middleweight crown against John Ryder this Saturday in Mexico.
100% Canelo will win. Look what happened when Ryder was going to fight me as the WBA mandatory. They gave him 30 days to accept the fight or drop the possibility of being mandatory to fight for a title. I go into camp and then he says he wasn't going to fight. He said that I didn't have enough fights to fight him. Then he posted on social media that I was the one who didn't want to fight him. I'm not one to respond on social media, but I had to. Morrell told George Ebro.
John Ryder decided to go to WBO route instead. When things fell apart between Demetrius Andrade and then unbeaten Zach Parker, John Ryder came into the picture.
John Ryder made the most of it. He beat Zach Parker, took his O, and took his WBO interim title, making him the mandatory challenger to Canelo.
So here we are.
It has to happen because it is what everyone is waiting for. You have to sit down and negotiate because it is a complicated fight. Right now, everyone is looking for Canelo, but there are some more fighters out there. Everyone wants Canelo for the money. It's understandable because this is a business, but there is also more boxers out there, Morrell said. That fight with Benavidez has to take place because he's killing everyone on his side, and I have been killing everyone on mine. Some say that I need to fight a couple of fights, but how long have they been saying that? When I started, they said don't put him in with this one or that one. Like in my second fight against Quentin Rankin, and then the same thing against Lennox Allen. They said my team was...
crazy.
The time is now for David Benavidez and David Morrell to fight, particularly for David Benavidez, because he doesn't want this guy to go banking more rounds and winning more fights and gaining more experience. It'll just make the job harder to do later on than it is here today. Here today, David Morrell, talented as he might be, he only has 9 fights.
That gives David Benavidez an edge.
David Benavidez, a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, and David Morrell, a boxer-puncher. Stylistically, it's actually David Morrell who has the edge, but in terms of rounds in the bank and experience, you have to give that edge to Benavidez.
One thing he has to his advantage.
I want to say that David Morrell may have the right base style for the job, the versatility, the size, the power, and the youth, but he ain't got the experience.
So the sooner David Benavidez gets him in the ring, the better his chances are of victory.
Tack on that, of the 3 names mentioned as potential opponents for David Benavidez moving forward, you're talking about Charlo, who ain't fought in 2 years and isn't likely to face David Benavidez next. You're talking about Demetrius Andrade.
Yeah.
Demetrius, who would likely require more money to take on David Benavidez than David Morrell would.
Demetrius Andrade is likely a more expensive option than David Morrell.
And David Morrell, you have the least expensive alternative with the least experience. So now is the time, at least for Team Benavidez, now is the time to do that fight, not later.
It's risky.
But if you let this guy gain more experience, it's only going to be that much more risky.
So what do you want to do?
David Morrell feels that Canelo Alvarez has to fight the winner of this fight. He says 150% because who else is he going to go looking for? He already fought Plant, Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, now he's going against Ryder. Whether I win or Benavidez, Canelo has to fight with one of us, because who else is he going to go look for? I don't see the logic to continue evading that scenario.
Evading isn't the word that I would use. He fought a better, more experienced guy than all he is in Dimitri Bivol, and he wants to fight him again.
Guy's a champion with about 8 or 9 successful title defenses. What the hell's supposed to make you better than him?
Take care of business against David Benavidez.
There's no excuse for you guys not to fight. There really isn't. You're on the same side of the street.
They say they want you, and you say you want them. Get her done.
Make the fight. No excuse to piss the time away, and the better portion of a year. Just in keeping with the theme of all things super middleweight, in some ways light heavyweight, Oscar De La Hoya stands firm that Hearn making the Canelo versus Bivol fight was a mistake.
I don't understand this guy. One minute he's criticizing Canelo Alvarez for fighting John Ryder. The next minute he's saying is he shouldn't have fought Dimitri Beterbiev.
Do you want him to challenge himself or not challenge himself? What I said about Eddie was I would have taken Canelo in a different direction. De La Hoya told IFL TV, I would have never made Bivol versus Canelo. Who in the hell was Bivol at the time? Nobody knew who he was. You're going to risk the face of boxing with a guy that nobody knew. Why? You go after guys like the WBC middleweight champion Jermall Charlo. You go after guys like David Benavidez, who have had a bigger name than Bivol. At the time, Bivol was a nobody. He beat the man, now he's the man. So look, I would have done it differently. Look, he has his ways and I have mine. So be it.
He's just trying to find a creative way to say that he would have coddled Canelo. He would have protected him because Jermall Charlo.
He's nothing. A fight with Jermall Charlo was already pursued in previous years, and it's the Jermall Charlo side of things, at least according to Golden Boy, that rejected the fight. It was according to Oscar.
He said it.
If he didn't cross over to the DAZN side of things when you pursued him, what makes you think he would have done it if it was Eddie?
What makes you think David Benavidez would have crossed the street? Did you hear what Samson Lukowicz very recently said?
Yes, sir. So, does that mean you'd be willing to fight on the zone if that's what Canelo wanted?
No, I believe that his contract expired on the next fight. On May.
Okay.
If Canelo Alvarez were, hypothetically speaking, still with Golden Boy Promotions, they wouldn't have any luck getting either Jermall Charlo or David Benavidez in the ring because they don't want to cross over. They don't want to fight on DAZN.
I will admit that those are two more basic fighters, and those are two more winnable fights than a Dimitri Bivol fight. I said it from the beginning. It's not a conclusion that I arrived to after the fight. I said it beforehand.
I'm no Monday morning quarterback. I said it leading up to the fight. The biggest banana skin for Canelo Alvarez out of all the guys standing in line waiting for him is Dimitri Bivol. Those other guys like Jermall,
He's nothing.
Demetrius Andrade got sat on his back pocket by both Vanez Martirosyan and more recently by Desmond Nicholson. These are not banana skins.
These guys are basic.
Give me the bit about the slick boxers, the slick fucking boxers. Demetrius Andrade ain't too slick to get dropped by Vanez Martirosyan and Desmond Nicholson.
Slick my ass.
David Benavidez' fight might be a little bit more challenging than those fights, though all the same. He's another basic hype job.
So what's Oscar really saying here? Because not but a few weeks ago he was criticizing Canelo for fighting John Ryder, saying he needs to fight better guys. In so many words, that's what he was saying.
But he did fight a better guy in Dimitri Bivol, a way better guy up there at light heavyweight, and you're still criticizing him for that.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't. Is that the deal?
Sounds like it. It sounds like no matter what Canelo Alvarez is doing on the matchroom side of things, Oscar will take every opportunity to take a jab at him and his promoter, Eddie Hearn. That's all it is. Oscar's just being petty.
He's jealous. He wishes he was still in the Canelo Alvarez business. Golden Boy Promotions hasn't been the same since he left.
Zerto Ramirez got beat. Ryan Garcia just got beat.
Golden Boy Promotions hasn't been the same since he left.
Since Canelo parted ways with them, and all Oscar is communicating is that if he was still in the Canelo Alvarez business, he would have protected him. He would have coddled him.
But you know what? If you really knew what you were doing, he wouldn't have left.
You fucked that up.